Okay. Can you hear me now? We're still in Isaiah number 28. And, we've been talking about these people there in Judah and the arrogance and stuff they had, even literal drunkenness among these people as they wouldn't make the right decisions, we've asked why. Why don't these, what's wrong with these people? Why don't they listen? Of course, we could ask ourselves the same question, because they had problems and issues that seem to mirror our problems today. And mostly is that we're pretty much an arrogant people, if we be honest about it. And people, in the world, people's rejection of God's word. These people complained a lot about things, and they complained about Isaiah. That Isaiah was just a simple man. He was supposed to be a word, a deliverer, a speaker of God, but they deemed him to be too much of a simple man, Excuse me. He didn't have enough eloquence about him. He didn't have the right pedigree, and all these things. And so they just disregarded him. And they disregarded, which a lot of people do, the simplicity of the gospel. The gospel is simple. It's simple to get. It's simple to take. It's supposed to be simple to receive and to understand. And that's why I think a lot of people this day, when everything is so, and there's nothing wrong with education, don't get me wrong, but everything's so education-based. If you don't have a period, a set of initials, and ... after your name, you're not considered to be a whole lot sometimes in this world. And so the simplicity of the gospel, just spoken by humble witness, it was dejected a whole lot by the people. And it happened a lot in the Bible. If you'll look around at it, I'll give you a couple of deals around. The prophet Amos. Amos was ejected from the king's chapel because he was just a simple farmer and not some member of some religious elite deal. And so they just booted him out of the temple. So we don't even want to listen to you. And even in modern day times, the great evangelist Dwight L. Moody, if you've ever read or heard anything about Dwight L. Moody, the thing about him was he was laughed at a lot because his speech was unpolished. He's just an old country guy, and that's the way he talked. And so he got laughed at a lot with some of his big speeches, but God used that man to bring thousands, I'm telling you, thousands of people to salvation, So what did Isaiah do? What did he do around all these super critical religious drunks that he was dealing with? I'll tell you what he said. He told them, and that's what he's telling them right about where we're at in this. He told them, he said, if you don't listen to me, God has another language for you to hear. And the language he had for them to hear was Assyrian, because Assyria was fixing to take them captive. And they were going to have to learn to understand something completely different. And it happened both to Ephraim, the north, and to Judah in the south. In the southern kingdom, Ephraim was just completely almost annihilated. And then that southern kingdom of Judah was pretty much completely destroyed, completely devastated, And Judah, it run right up almost to the door of Jerusalem, so it was getting really, really close to stuff happening there. God even tells these people after he's all this punishment and everything, and it's kind of happened several times before we've read it, where God even offers these folks rest, and he offers them peace. And they rejected that because they were so arrogant. I guess they weren't taking handouts from God or something, Their faith was all in their arrogance and was in what they made as these political alliances. They had a political alliance with Assyria. It didn't matter to God. God told Assyria, go take them captive, and they did, So that political stuff, it mattered not. And so that just kind of runs us back again, kind of up to date where we're at. And so we're going to start tonight in verse number 14. It says, therefore hear the word of the Lord, you scornful men, who rule this people who are in Jerusalem. So, he's talking about the people. Y'all need to hear this word. He was talking about you scornful men. These guys, they wouldn't listen. They didn't have nothing that they wanted to hear from God. But there was some stuff brewing up in the north. There was some stuff going on. And the stuff that they had going on in the north and the judgment and stuff that was going on in the north, the south should have paid attention to it, Ephraim, and Judah and Jerusalem, and everything was all real quiet. And Jerusalem still speaks to us today about some of the stuff that's going on, the stuff that's going on over in Israel right now, And this whole thing should speak to all of us because it's all happening from God's word. There's a lot of prophecy, that's happening, a revelation from prophecy that's still going on today over in that part of the world. And so, I know that I'm not no great big student of everything that's happening over in the Middle East, but I do know that what's happening over there ought not be no surprise to any of us because God said it many times that this stuff is going to happen. And, and then the bad part about it is before any of it's over, it's all here and there going to get worse because that great tribulation time is yet to come. Okay? Verse number 15. Because you have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with Sheol we are in agreement. When the overflowing scourge passes through, it will not come to us, for we made lies our refuge, and under falsehood we have hid ourselves. This is about these alliances that they're talking about, and that's what the Lord's saying. The Lord said, man, look, basically, he says there, you made a covenant with death, and with Sheol, you're in agreement. He said, you've made a deal with the devil himself. That's all you've done. And the devil's going to come take you captive, is what he's telling them here. You're making a deal, and basically, Israel has made a deal with the Antichrist, the prince of sin, that they're being controlled by Satan. And that's what God's trying to show them here. And nobody wants to listen because they're arrogant, and the arrogant people, they just know more than everybody else does. And so these people at that time were smarter than God was. Okay? So they thought. Verse number 16. Therefore thus says the Lord God, behold, I lay in Zion a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. Whoever believes will not act hastily. What's he talking about? He's talking about Jesus, That's what he's talking about. So, what to glean from the falsehood of these times that's going on, what of these people and the deals they're making and all these political treaties and all this stuff, it's trouble for them, just continues to snowball, and it's going to continue to snowball until that time of the Great Tribulation, even though they go through captivity, get taken captive and stuff. What he's telling them is y'all just need to get back to the foundation. You need to get back to the root of everything. He says go back to the precious stone, to the cornerstone, to the sure foundation. He's telling them if they'll believe in this, then the rest that they're looking for will come. And he's offered them rest, and they've rejected it. Look at, I can't remember now. Is it 1st or 2nd Peter, did we decide? Show me one of them, and we'll look at it. Yeah, this is the one. Therefore it is also contained in the scripture, behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he who believes on him will by no means be put to shame. He says, look, just turn it over to God. Turn back to God. Of course, this cornerstone is Jesus, but, they got God right there. And God's saying, if you'll come back and if you'll come to me and turn to me, he says, everything will be fine. Simon Peter is trying to clarify this for us, that this stone is Christ, that this stone is God, He's the forever. And if they would just come back to that, man, their lives and their whole world would change. But To no avail. It's just like he's talking to people that can't hear. Verse 17. Also I will make justice the measuring line, and the righteousness as the plummet. The hail will sweep away the refuge of lies, and the waters will overflow the hiding place. Okay, he said he's going to draw a line. That's what he's talking about. I'll make justice the measure line. He said, I'm only going to put up with so much. I'm going to draw a line in the sand here, basically, is what he's telling them, you know. And this judgment's going to come. But it's looking here. It says, the hail will sweep away the refuge of lies, and the waters will overflow the hiding place. So what he's talking about there in the kind of speech that they had back during that day, it's like, I'm not going to just whoop all this judgment down there and own you at one time. He said, y'all been going bad for years and years and years and years, and that's exactly the way I'm going to bring that judgment on you. I'm going to bring it slow and steady, and it's going to be painful. You know, you're going to regret sooner or later everything that you're doing. He's saying, you know, this drama y'all got is being stretched out, and you know, it's been going on so long, and he said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring judgment on you, and I'm going to bring it on slow, and I'm going to bring it on where sometimes you can barely see it, you can barely feel it, until you get your sight back and your vision readjusted and go the right way. You know, I think about that, and I think about us as people, and I think about folks when there seems to be an awful lot of drama going on in your life. When you're shaking your head, you're walking around going, well, I don't understand all this that's going on. I don't understand this. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. It's time for you to stop and to look at exactly where you're at with God. Because I think when drama starts evolving, is one of the ways that God shows us that we have got off the track. And we need to get back in line, you know, and get some things lined out. So if you're plagued with drama, figure out where you're at, what's going on. Because God's waiting to make things right. You know, all these treaties that these people made with their pride, it's just wearing out like a water over a stone. You know, water will cut through a stone, but it takes a long, long time. It's just a little bit at a time, and a little bit at a time. So God's offering himself to them as their solution, but he's not going to run in there like a charging army, because they're not listening to him when he sends people. So he's going to be there. He's going to be hanging around. He's going to watch out. But he ain't going to move no faster than they did until they decide that they'll accept him, just like for us. He's a gentleman. He's not going to force his way in, but he's going to stand there on the sideline going, hey, when you want me, I'll be right here. I'll be right here. Verse 18 and 19, we look at them. Your covenant with death will be annulled, and your agreement with Sheol will not stand when the overflowing scourge passes through, when you will be trampled down by it. As often as it goes out, it will take you. For morning by morning, it will pass over, and day by night, it will be a terror just to understand the report. So he's talking about this drama. It's just going to keep continuing. It's going to be dragging on. It's dragging on of this judgment. It's going to be a day by day. It's going to be a night thing. It's just drama after drama after drama after drama until somebody gets some brains about them. It's basically what he's telling them there. Verse number 20. For the bed is too short to stretch out on, and the covering so narrow that one cannot wrap himself around. Any of y'all ever been short-sheeted? You know what being short-sheeted is? Y'all ever play that trick on somebody? You get in bed, and your cover comes up to about right here, so you pull it up to your chin, and it comes off your feet because somebody done shortened your sheets. He said, basically, that's what this is going to be. He said, I'm going to be there. He said, but I'm not going to give you full coverage, okay? He said, I'm not going to give you full covering, you know, not complete cover for you. See it at all, but, you know, you can see it, but by your choice, you're not going to get it all until you make the choice, to come back to where I am. The cover is so narrow that one cannot wrap himself around it. He said, so you're going to have some exposure until you get right. And, and you think about this stuff and you think, well, all this was way back then, but all this stuff is still so true for us today. It's still so true for us today. So, again, when things start happening that don't make sense and you think, well, this is completely out of character, well, where's my character? What am I doing? How am I living? Have I drifted away from the sound doctrine of what I know to be true? And if I dabble in something else, and if I do, I need to get my business straight. Verses 21 through 24. For the Lord will rise up at Mount Perazim, and he will be angry as in the valley of Gibeon, that he may do his work, his awesome work, and bring it to pass his act, his unusual act. Now therefore do not be mockers, let your bonds be made strong, for I have heard from the Lord of God of hosts a destruction determined even upon the whole earth. Give ear to hear my voice, listen and hear my speech. Does the plowman keep plowing all day to sow? Does he keep turning his soil and breaking the clods? Got a bone in my throat. He keeps talking to these folks. He's trying to get these folks to come around. He's trying to make sense with them. You think, man, he just keeps talking in circles. He's trying to hit on something, it seems like, that'll strike a note with these people. That what they do is bringing these judgments. And so what he's telling them is you got to do something differently. Just like this. Does the plowman keep plowing all day to sow? Does he keep turning his soil and breaking the clods? No, you don't plow with the middle buster the whole time. You don't just keep breaking the ground over and over. Once it's broke, then you have to treat it. That's when you get the disc and you get the cutting plows out and stuff, when you start cutting it and breaking it down smaller to where it'll accept seed and stuff. And so that's what he's telling them. Y'all got to change something up. You got to do something different because this ain't working for you, okay? And verse 25 through 28, I think we end at 28 tonight is where it's going to end. When he has leveled its surface, does he not sow the black cumin and scatter the cumin, plant the wheat in rows, and barley in the appointed place, and the spelt in its place? For he instructs him in right judgment, his God teaches him. For the black cumin is not threshed with a threshing sledge, nor is a cartwheel rolled over the cumin, but the black cumin is beaten out with a stick, and the cumin with a rod. Granite flour must be ground, therefore it does not thresh it forever. Break it with this cartwheel or crush it with this horseman. So he's talking about all these different seeds. And these different seeds he's talking about are talking about the different people that he's having to deal with in all of this. Because everybody's different, right? But he's talking about disobedience. There seemed to be not a lot of gentleness in the way. I mean, the Lord's telling them all this. He's talking about this cumin. He's talking about using, as he instructs Isaiah, he's talking about tough times are coming. Tough times are going to abound. God's talking about the rod and the staff. Those are for two things. The rod and the staff are for hurting and for correction. That's what they're used for. And so that it's coming. And he talks about the cartwheel and stuff. And, that some of this stuff like the wheat, the bread wheat, is going to be, if they have to harvest it this way, it's going to get bruised. It won't be near as good for the people to use, okay? So we're going to have to decide on the judgment of what we want and what we do for ourselves. If these people and if we would just listen and do what God asks us to do. You know, it's not like we don't have to deal with the law anymore. And so we don't have all this list of rules. There's so many hundred rules and regulations that there's no way we could fulfill. We just need to listen and do the things that he asks us to do. And even when we mess up, see, because now we've got forgiveness because of the cross. We have that opportunity to go to God and ask for forgiveness and all these things. So if we would just, we don't even have to do all his will, but we got to be trying. If we'll try to do his will, we'll admit that when we mess up, that he'll spare the rod and the staff and the severity of these judgments that's coming. Will we still have to put up with the chastity? Yeah, because he's going to try to correct us, because his desire is to make us better, but not to have all this judgment on us, you know, that is coming on these people right there. And he's telling them, you know, if they'll do better, that he'd do better for them. And they just don't want to listen. They still don't want to listen. Too much arrogance and too much drunkenness, okay? And I don't know which one's the worst. I don't know if the arrogant are worse or the drunks are worse. But right here, neither one of them doing very good, okay? So that kind of finishes up there with chapter 28. And, you know, we just kind of think about it, compare it to what we ought to be doing and what we are doing. You know, when it talks about the harvest, also let's look. I want to look before we leave. Look at Matthew chapter 13, verse 30. Red letters, okay? Let both grow together until the harvest. And at the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, first gather together the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat only into my barn. So he's talking about these people. Well, the same rules apply to that. You know, there's going to be a few good wheat. There's going to be some good seeds out there, and I'll gather that into myself. He says, but this other stuff, I got no use for it. It's just trash, you know. It's going to be good. And where does it go? It goes to the fire. And where's the fire? It's not in a good place, I'll tell you that. Okay, in verse 1341, the Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all that offend and those who practice lawlessness. So, you know, there's coming. He's talking about this judgment. He's doing judgment. And he's not doing judgment to be bad or ugly or mean or anything. He's trying to get people's attention. That's just like us. We go through hard times. We go through this drama stuff. Drama's just to get our attention, to get us back on track. Well, a lot of times when we go through hard times, if we'd really stop and look at why we have the hard times, we pretty much caused it on ourselves, you know. I mean, if we be honest about some of it. So you just kind of got to look at where you're at and what you're doing, and try to do for God all the time. That's all he's asking of these people. They just don't want to. They just don't want to do it. So, all right, that'll finish us up.